Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum, dear students. This session is about pigeons. I hope and expect by the end of this session you would be able to understand the concept of pigeons and you would also know some of the examples of pigeons. Well, my dear students, on the screen you can see the definition of a pigeon that I have quoted for you. Pigeons are varieties created for very practical and immediate purposes of communication between people who otherwise would have no common language whatsoever and learned by one person from another within the communities concerned as the accepted way of communicating with members of the other community. Now, there are certain concepts that are important for you to understand here. That pigeons are what? They are varieties that are learned for practical and immediate purposes. A situation emerges where people who are interacting do not know each other's language. So for the practical purposes, a new language would be created. They are not common languages otherwise. That is the second point. Because they emerge in particular situations. And how are they learned? They are learned by the users of this particular pigeon within that community as they communicate with each other. And people outside that community, this is the fourth point, they do not understand that. I would also like to introduce the concept of trade language. Sometimes it is thought that a trade language is a pigeon. So let's look at these concepts. Why a trade language is called a trade language? Because it is used for the purposes of communication when it comes to business or trade. So, when we say what is the difference in a pigeon and a trade language, not necessarily that all the trade languages would be pigeons or vice versa, opposite to that. I would give you one example. If you think of Northwest Amazon area, Tucano is the language of one of the 20-odd tribes. There are more than 20 tribes here who speak Tucano language, but it is also used as a trade language by all the other tribes, not only these ones. In the same way, English and French are widely used as trade language varieties, especially created for the purpose of communication of all the groups, all across everywhere. But these languages are also used otherwise. If we look at the emergence of pigeons and their spread, a large number of pigeon languages, they have spread throughout the continents, including Europe, where people as immigrants come from different places and they get settled. And when they get settled there, if the local language is, for example, A, and these people come with language B, they do not understand each other. And in order to communicate with each other, taking certain elements out of these languages, they create a new language. This new language is a language that does not have any precedence before that has not been used before that, and this is called a pigeon language. So the major point is each pigeon is created to suit the special needs of the particular time or context. It depends on whatever kinds of contact normally arise between the communities. Depending upon that, a pigeon would be generated. This also implies, because it is need-based, so it does not go beyond need. So, there won't be literature written in that, for example, there won't be any other purposes that it would serve. It would just serve those immediate needs. If the contract is restricted, for example, to buying and selling of certain items, only those vocabulary items, only those language structures would emerge that would suit to fulfill those needs. It would not go beyond that. So 1, 2, 5, a dozen, whatever are the functions to be performed through that, only those linguistic structures and items would be, lexical items would be generated in the language that would fulfill these needs of the people or the users. Another requirement for it is, most of the times it is very simple. The structures are very simple because people A and people B, they don't understand each other. People A and people B speak two different languages. So the new language, the pigeon that would be created would be very simple so that people can easily learn it and can use it for different purposes. Generally, the vocabulary that it has is of the dominant group. If group A is dominant, then their language. If group B is dominant, then their language would influence more in terms of vocabulary choices. For example, a group of migrant workers from Turkey living in Germany will not benefit much from a pidgin whose vocabulary is based on Turkish, because the number of the Turkish people would then be smaller. The number of the German people would be greater. So most of the vocabulary would come German language, so that, when it is spoken, all the people could benefit out of that. This kind of examples are very, prominently present in the history. All the colonial situations and experiences in the history tell that whenever there would be a colonization, for example, when you talk of colonization of the subcontinent, the language of the what we may call the ruler or the colonizer would be the language that would have a lot of impact on the languages of the locals, and thus a mix would be created as a new language to suit the needs, where the rural could communicate with the ruled, and thus the business and the government could be run. There are a lot of such examples of pidgin-based varieties of English, French, Portuguese, and Dutch across the globe. In all these cases, it is actually the dominant variety that contributes more. However, still it is a compromise. We cannot say it is all the dominant variety. It is a combination of the two anyways. So mainly syntax and phonology, they may be similar, to the larger group or the stronger groups, language, syntax, and phonology, so that it becomes easier for people to speak. A sentence from Talk Pidgin, the English-based pidgin spoken in Papua New Guinea, here I am going to use as an example. Look at the example on the screen. The translation is given at the bottom. He will not see me. At the top of this, you can see, the Talk Pidgin variety. The English origins of the vocabulary in this example are not immediately obvious in the official spellings, which reflects the words, their current pronunciation, and the origin of these words. But if we closely look at this example, the word by, from by and by in English, an adverb that is used in English, is changed into this by and is used. The word in this example comes from him, which means he. So, the words, their pronunciation, their shape and form is slightly changed. I from he, but obligatorily added to the verb whose subject is third person, like we add s suffix in English. The word no here comes from no or from not of English, and it is used instead of the verb does not. So, a lot of simplification has taken place. Instead of the English adverbial, for example, by and by, simply by is used. Instead of do not or does not, only no is used. And thus, through the processes of oversimplification, a pidgin is created. In the same way, look is from look, which means to see. Im is from him. I think this we can guess easily. And me is from me. So, the example shows how the syntax and the vocabulary and even the pronunciation, they are simplified to create, this variety of Talk Pidgin that is used as a pidgin. So, overall, the pidgins serve the purpose of providing a means of communication by providing a very simple new form or variety of a language.